You are very critical of Western civilization. Would you say that you are an Islamic or Muslim supremacist?
Yes, of course. Of course. Muslim supremacist, of course. Islamic supremacist, of course. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's not a thing wrong with that. You're a Western supremacist. You believe in the supremacy of your values. You believe in the supremacy of your belief system. You believe in the supremacy of your belief system so much that you want the whole world to follow it. You try to force the entire world to follow your belief system because you believe it's so right. You came up with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You took it upon yourself to decide what are the human rights for the entire human race.
Well, all right, but I mean,
That's supremacist. You believe that you have the authority, you have the right to decide what are the rights of human beings everywhere in the world forever. And your belief in your right to do that has been brutally manifest all around the world for centuries. Not for years, not for decades, for centuries. But the difference is that in Islam, to believe in the supremacy of Islam includes everything about Islam, meaning that one of the things that we believe in is that we don't have the right to compel you to follow our beliefs. But you don't have that. You absolutely believe that you have the right to compel others to follow your beliefs. And the entire 20th century, and forget that, the 19th century, and as long as anyone can remember, is testimony to the fact that you believe that you have every right in the world to force all of the people in the world to follow your belief system. That you have the right to impose that on people. And people all over the world, in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, in the Middle East, everywhere in the world can testify to the fact that you don't believe that you don't have a right to compel people. You absolutely believe that you have the right to compel people through force, through invasion, through occupation, through colonialism, through imperialism, through extremely coercive economic policies. But Muslims, we don't believe that we have the right to impose that. We believe lakum dinukum waliya din. To you your way, to us our way. To you your deen, to you your belief system, your way of life, your lifestyle, your approach to the world, and to us ours. That's part of our belief. So our supremacist nature about Islam includes the fact that we don't have a right to compel you to follow our way. We believe that our belief is superior. And we believe that anyone who follows that belief is following a superior belief system. And of course, I fully believe that following Islam is the best way for any human being to live their life. And the perfect set of laws, the perfect set of ethics, the perfect set of morals for any individual to follow and for any state to follow. Being a Muslim supremacist isn't racial. Muslim isn't a race. It's not an ethnicity. It's a belief. And we absolutely believe in the perfection and superiority of what we believe in. We have absolute conviction about that, absolute commitment to that, certainty about that, yaqeen about that. But do you have that about yours? Do you have that conviction about yours? You're very busy trying to impose it all around the world, but when times get tough for you, your so-called enlightenment values go out the window, don't they? I mean, when there's too many diverse opinions in your society, then you start creating bureaus and departments in the government for combating so-called disinformation. Freedom of the press is out the window. When times get tough, you ban protests. You arrest people for protesting. Freedom of assembly out the window. When your belief system becomes difficult to maintain, difficult to preserve, you throw it under the bus without hesitation. But that's not the case with Muslims. Muslims throughout imperialism, throughout colonialism, throughout the Crusades, throughout poverty, throughout war, throughout invasion, throughout occupation, have maintained their belief. Even without the Khilafah, even without the Islamic State, and even without the Islamic Empire, Muslim societies are still strong and committed to Islam. We're still committed to our belief system. Nothing can change that. Maybe we have failed states, but we don't have failed societies. We don't have failed cultures. Our governments may fall, but our people remain the same. Our people remain committed to the same values, to the same morals, to the same moral laws, regardless of whether there's a government over them to enforce that. But that's not the case with you. Even though you're trying to impose your value system all around the world, When things become difficult in your own societies, you abandon your principles, you abandon your values. They're insufficient for preserving the security and the stability and the tranquility of your societies. They're insufficient. They're inadequate for that. So that alone, along with many, many other things, that alone shows me the inferiority of your value system, the inferiority of your belief system, and the superiority of Islam. And your belief system, your Enlightenment values, are extremely selectively applied in your society throughout your history. They apply to some people and not others. It's like in George Orwell's Animal Farm. Some people are more equal than others in your society. Your value system is not evenly applied. I mean, there's obvious examples everyone knows about. But just look at democracy, for example. You want democracy all around the world, supposedly. You say that you want democracy all around the world, so-called. But you don't even apply democracy. Let's just, for the sake of argument, let's pretend that you have a democratic system in the United States, and it's an actually healthy, functioning democratic system, which is obviously not the case. But let's just, for the sake of argument, pretend that it is. You don't believe that democracy is important, for example, in the private sector. You don't believe that businesses, that companies, that corporations should be democratic. Your belief in the supremacy of democracy does not extend to the private sector. Corporations don't have to be democratic, do they? In fact, corporations are sacrosanct. It's sacrilegious to say that there should be any intervention in the private sector to make it actually accountable to the population, accountable to the public, accountable to the workers. And anyone who even talks about something like that, anyone who even suggests that companies and corporations should be democratic, will be persecuted. I mean, look at the struggle that organized labor had in the United States. Coal miners were literally bombed from the sky when they tried to organize and secure their rights and have some kind of democratic representation with the coal companies. When just now, when the railway workers were wanting to strike for better wages, for more humane working conditions, more rational and reasonable and fair workloads that would actually help to guarantee the safety of those trains, Joe Biden and the government prohibited them from striking. Where's the democracy? Because you don't mean the things that you say. You don't mean the values that you espouse. You don't mean it. If you meant it, then you would apply it across the board. You would apply it to everybody in all institutions and all dimensions of your society. It would be applied everywhere, but it's not. Democracy doesn't belong in the workplace. Democracy doesn't belong in the company, in the business, in the corporation. And no one's even supposed to suggest that it should. That's an inferior belief system. It's inadequate. It's inadequate for building a civilization, for building a cohesive society. Because look, the only group identity, the only sort of group identity that makes any sense at all, it's not racial, it's not ethnic, it's not nationalistic, not even based on language or shared culture or shared heritage. None of that makes any sense as a shared group identity. The only thing that makes sense is shared belief system. That's the only thing that makes sense as a group identity from which you can build cohesion and camaraderie and brotherhood and solidarity between people. Only belief system. You can have a certain skin color and have nothing whatsoever in common with other people who have that skin color. You can have the same language and certainly have nothing in common whatsoever with someone who speaks the same language. You can, I'm German Irish. What do I have to do with all of the other people in the world who were German Irish? Just because we're German Irish, we have nothing in common. And yet I have more in common with a Muslim from Mali, with a Muslim from Indonesia, with a Muslim from Morocco, with a Muslim from China, from Chechnya. I have more in common with them immediately, instantly, effortlessly. We have the same frame of reference. We have the same moral code. We have the same belief. We admire the same people. Our heroes are the same heroes. Our role model is the same role model. I have more in common with them than I have with someone whose belief system is different from mine, but who looks like me, or who speaks my language, or who comes from my country. That doesn't create solidarity, and there's no reason why it should. Solidarity should be based on shared belief. People who share class identification, that makes some sense, but it's very narrow. It's not deep, it's not that meaningful. It's sort of ad hoc. You can have class solidarity on an ad hoc basis, meaning you can have solidarity with other people in the working class, other people who are poor, or if you're on the other end of the spectrum, other people who are rich, because you have shared material interests. Those things are not identity markers that make any sense for building group solidarity, group cohesion, group identity, and sense of brotherhood and fraternity and togetherness and unity. And, you know, this is why in the West you have, you know, popping up all the time, all of these various identity groups, instead of, well, we all believe in Western values. We all believe in Enlightenment values. You don't have any set of civilizational values that actually build real solidarity and cohesion among your people. Because even the beliefs that you have, even the values and the beliefs that you have are incoherent and are divisive by nature. They breed division by nature. You don't have a standard of beliefs that everyone can follow for what is moral and what is immoral, what's right, what's wrong. You don't have that. What kind of a society doesn't have an agreement on what's right and wrong? How can you have a cohesive civilization when you're not even all in agreement about what's right and what's wrong, what's good and bad? I mean, if you want to, you know, if you don't want to put it in the religious terms of what's righteous and what's sinful, it doesn't matter. What's moral and what's immoral? There's no agreement among you people. So how can you have cohesion? How can you have real brotherhood and solidarity as a people? You have all of these various fake identity groups on superficial identity markers popping up all the time. You have, you know, white nationalists. You have male supremacists, female supremacists, feminists, red pill, you know. And then you have, even beyond that, you have people who identify themselves literally by the brands that they buy. I'm an Apple person. I'm an Android person. You know, I buy Dolce & Gabbana. I like Nike better than Adidas. I support the Knicks. I support the Broncos. I support, you know, the Dodgers, whatever it is. Because you don't have anything else to build a real sense of community among your people, among your so-called civilization. Because you're not in agreement about anything. So how can there be cohesion? And you can say, you know, that there's cohesion in the beautiful diversity of beliefs, but okay, you can have, that's where you're confused. You can have cohesion, you can have brotherhood, you can have solidarity among a diversity of races, a diversity of ethnicities, a diversity of skin colors, a diversity of heritage, diversity of cultures, as long as there's a shared belief system, shared moral values. But you can't have a diversity of moral values. That's not going to work. That will only create tension and friction in the society. There's no way that that can work. That's a civilizational failure. But this never happened in the Muslim world. Alhamdulillah, the Muslims are solid. We're all agreed. The only people that you'll ever find in the Muslim world who are confused about what's right and what's wrong are people who are influenced by the West. Doesn't that tell you something? Doesn't that tell you about your culture? Doesn't that tell you about your beliefs? Doesn't that tell you about your values? Doesn't that tell you about your civilization? That anyone who is influenced by your civilization becomes confused about morality? But any normal rank and file Muslim, from, like I said, from Morocco to China to Brunei, you know, to Bosnia, to Turkey, to Saudi Arabia, to Lebanon, to Egypt, to Sudan, we're all in agreement about what's right and what's wrong. We're all in agreement about what's moral and what's immoral, what's righteous and what's sinful. We all agree. The rank and file, the normal average Muslim has no confusion about what's morally right and what's morally wrong. The largest single cohesive identity group in the world with a shared identity that's actually deep and profound and meaningful. That's not the case for people outside of the Muslim belief system. It's not even the case among Christians. Among Christians, there's a wide variety of beliefs among Christians. Maybe you'll find it among Jews, but even then, there's a serious question about who qualifies to even be called a Jew among Jewish people. For example, there's many Jews who are atheists, which doesn't make any sense to me. But what do they have in common with an Orthodox Jew? So even for you to believe in the supremacy of your belief system is already irrational. Your belief system does not lend itself to solidarity. Your belief system doesn't lend itself to cohesion. It doesn't lend itself to a group identity. And that's why it's never really been enough. Your belief system cannot actually create a cohesive identity for a large group of people. Everybody in the society is looking for some way to find an identity and then to expand that into some identity group so that they can have some sense of belonging. That's a type of struggle that Muslims never experience, because we have a sense of belonging wherever we go in the world, because we can go into any Muslim community and belong. I could go from China to Latin America and find Muslim communities where I would belong and where the people there would resonate with me and I would resonate with them, and we would understand each other and we would be able to relate to each other and we would feel brotherhood for each other. You can't say the same. You couldn't fill a room with random Europeans from France, from Germany, from Romania, from England, and then from America, from Australia, from Canada. You couldn't fill a room with random Westerners and have them all agree on what's morally right and what's morally wrong on any issue. And the people, and whoever agrees, whatever two people agree on something will disagree on something else if it's a moral issue, because your basic moral belief has become that nothing is right and nothing is wrong. Well, how are you going to survive as a society? How are you going to survive as a civilization when you have a belief like that? Alhamdulillah, this is not a problem that we have in the Muslim world. We have close to 2 billion people. It will soon be 2 billion people, the overwhelming majority of which all agree on basic moral values, all agree on basic definitions of morality, and who, again, overwhelmingly agree on the purpose of life, and what kind of a lifestyle you should live, what your way of life should be, what your conduct should be in the world, what your conduct should be in society, what your obligations are, what your duties are in society. The overwhelming majority of close to 2 billion people in the world are all in agreement on that. That's cohesion. That's a basis for solidarity. That is an actual civilization. No matter what we've gone through, no matter what difficulties we face, unlike you, when times get tough for you, you throw your values out the window. When times get tough for the Muslims, they cling to their values even stronger. Their conviction in their beliefs grows. So yeah, of course, I'm an Islamic supremacist, and that's not saying anything wrong. Just as you wouldn't believe that there's anything whatsoever wrong with saying that the Enlightenment values are superior. And it's not just the conservatives, the so-called right wing, it's the left wing too, the so-called left wing, which barely exists in the West, an actual left wing. The liberals, wokeism is like the ultimate expression of liberalism. And it's the most intolerant belief system in the world. It's incredibly intolerant. It's tyrannical. Because at the end of the day, you don't mean any of it. You don't mean any of it. It's unsustainable. It cannot actually sustain a civilization, a society, or a culture, which is why it hasn't. It hasn't. You admit by your own actions that your beliefs are luxury beliefs. When everything is perfect, when everything is fine, then we'll go ahead and preserve those values. We'll preserve those beliefs. But if anything gets difficult, then for the sake of national security, we'll suspend everything. Well, if they're genuine beliefs, then you never have to suspend them. If they're things that you really believe in, if those are actually superior, then you would never have to suspend them. If they were actually superior values, then you would be able to apply them in every situation. You would never have to suspend them. They would be responsive and reliable in all scenarios. But as soon as you get into any kind of a difficult situation, you reject the values. Well, Muslims don't do that, because we don't have to. Because in fact, our value system, our belief system, our moral convictions are always applicable. They apply in any society, in any set of circumstances, in any situation, and always will.